Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Out of Curiosity. With us today is a very special guest who I've been looking forward to speaking with and getting caught up on what's going on in her life. Is Kat Casey. Hi, Kat. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much. I we've been friends forever and crossing the eDiscovery dataverse back and forth. So it's always good to have a chance to sit down, talk, and share the latest and greatest.
Well, and that's kind of been the whole point of Out of Curiosity, Kat, which is, as people cross my paths and I want to learn more about them, I usually invite them on and we get to talk about things. So, as you mentioned, we have crossed paths for many, many years. In fact, even potentially back in the Austin days. But I know I saw, and what kind of triggered my kind of reaching out to you is there was a pretty big announcement for you recently. Can you maybe share a little bit about that, and then we'll, dig into a little bit about your background from there.
Yeah, I caught a case of FOMO. I was watching this company Reveal gobble up Brainspace, NextLP, luminaries like George Socha, and I kind of thought I don't want to miss out on being part of a company that's making some pretty big waves. And so a couple weeks ago, I joined the team with Jay Lieb and Wendell and George Socha to help kind of shepherd this company that I think is going to shake things up in the industry. And so lots of news, lots of buzz about it. Even have people making their own job announcements saying it won't get as much buzz as Cats, but by the way, I moved to another law firm. It was pretty cool.
Well, that's good. I mean, and that's really actually one of the key things. And I'd love for people to kind of hear a little bit about, you know, you do a lot of networking, especially on LinkedIn. And I know you do a lot of other networking, but I mean, you seem to be a really key LinkedIn kind of, you're keyed in there. Could you maybe talk a little bit about why that platform and some of the things you do around LinkedIn to really, kind of promote you with your personal brand and some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, I was an early adopter. I think I got on LinkedIn like in '07, and I just used it as a way to kind of just start connecting with people who weren't going to talk with the at the time 23-year-old me that was still cutting my teeth on tech, a recovering philosophy major. And then over the years I realized there was kind of a real gap in people kind of having a fun and approachable way of talking about legal tech to try to make it a little less daunting, a little more engaging. And so I started leveraging initially LinkedIn to just kind of share stories or articles I like to connect with people who maybe wouldn't give me the time of day. And then over the last couple of years, it's really evolved to my key platform for sharing blogging or articles about AI or articles about, hey, have you heard about Clubhouse or Slack or Twitter? How are you managing that eDiscovery? And instead of it being what it started out as is like, hey, talk to me, or hey, here's a news article. It turned into, hey, let's have a conversation. And I do. I use TikTok. I do use other social platforms. A little bit of Twitter, although I'm terrible at it. But I have found that for like fostering a conversation and getting, folks like you and other people in the industry talking about stuff that I think is really impactful, LinkedIn's been a really good platform.
Well, and what's always been, I mean, one of the reasons that I've always liked kind of tracking your networking is you actually call people out. I mean, you have a group called Legal Eagles, I think it is part of when you tag, and I've been blessed to have been part of that. So, obviously, what was the purpose of trying to do that as you're tagging and creating posts for people?
Well, it's if you're going to start a conversation in a sea of noise, you've got to let people know, hey, I'm talking about something I think you're interested in. And so I kind of, I just have like a mental checklist of folks who, if it's privacy, it's going to be Wayne Mattis, it's going to be Debbie Reynolds. If it's a little more pure play discovery, I'll probably loop you in. If it's just something general news in the industry, it's Mary Mack, the latest at EDRM, it's Mike Q, it's Jonathan Mass in the UK. So I try to bring people in that I know would have something interesting to say, because LinkedIn can get very noisy. And even if you've got a pretty focused feed, depending what time of day you come in, maybe you won't see something that's really impactful for you. And so my goal is it's not really ever views or clicks. It's just like, hey, let's talk about something interesting. That's why sometimes I'll just post a cheeky picture and a question. Sometimes I'll post a poll, sometimes a TikTok video, because they're much easier to do than YouTube videos.
Hmm.
But the aim is to get folks talking, because I think because you and I are pretty pioneers isn't the right word, but like we're early members of this e-discovery verse. We kind of had to figure it out on our own. I'm trying to help create a dialogue in a place where people can learn about it and kind of keep up to speed and not have to figure it out as piecemeal a fashion as we did.
So that brings up a really interesting question for me because I mean, it sounds like you're using this to really kind of bring in and tie a community together. But social media being what it is, it's super easy to get sucked into your own kind of echo chamber
Mhm.
of the same people over and over. Have you found ways to kind of break through that and find ways to bring other people from the community into your world?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think what I'll do sometimes, I've got a dauntingly big network, like something like 25,000 people. So I sometimes can even forget who's in the mix. And so if I know it's an article or a topic that is maybe a little bit different from the standard kind of pure play discovery, I'll run a search and I'll say, all right, who's got, FCPA, International, South America, and I'll start tagging those folks. And some people don't like it, they'll tell me, but in general, folks are interested to start a dialogue. And sometimes if I know it's, a unique thing to a certain group, maybe I'll post it in a group instead of in the main body of LinkedIn. And if someone chimes in that, hey, I'm not connected to, I add them and I'll send a quick note and say, hey, I noticed you commented, thanks so much. And or if someone starts commenting and getting looped in with more frequency, like Alex Sue or Colin Levy, they weren't part of my ecosystem at first, but when I saw that, hey, they're interested in creating this ecosystem too, suddenly I'll start tagging them a little bit more. And so it's kind of about being fluid, but it's also kind of easy to get stuck in your holding pattern of the same 15 people who then are like, Kat, why are you tagging me every day? So you got to kind of balance the two of them.
So, how much thought do you put behind doing that? I mean, it's pretty. I mean, this is not effortless for sure, right? And it's definitely you've definitely put thought behind it. What is the time and what is the thought that you do in order to prepare for that on a kind of on a daily basis?
It's the creation of the post is not as complicated as figuring out who I want to loop in and then keeping up with the commentary. So I try to find little hacks. Like I don't know if you've ever seen, but every third post or comment I write has a typo because I type like an idiot. So I've kind of switched to doing like audio recording. So if I'm in between Zoom calls and I'm playing fetch with my new puppy, because if I don't, he'll bark on the next Zoom call, I can actually be commenting into my audio on my phone and interacting with people while I've got a few minutes. So I try to not have it be like, oh, I need a huge chunk of time. It's more pop in, pop out. I've got it on my mobile phone. I've got it on my laptop. And so kind of keeping my finger on it. And it's not without effort, but I'm also super fixated on it. Other folks can, I think, get a lot of value just by 5-10 minutes every day. When I first started, I actually would spend 1 hour a week and I'd pre-schedule multiple posts. And like that was just a way to at least have a touch every day. So there's a lot of different levels of involvement you can have.
Well, and thank you. I really appreciate you sharing kind of your insight on the social media side because I think that's something that people, especially from a networking perspective, just completely overlook or focus almost too much. There's a fine balance between actually doing work
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
building your work credibility to talking about it. And I think you've really struck a good balance of that over the years. So and I want to appreciate that. I think it's good for the audience to kind of hear about that. Um, so let's talk a little bit about your journey. So I know you. Ironically, we have a little bit of a connection back to your high school days, but I had a family member that was had actually taught at your high school when you were
Okay.
there a long time ago. But
Okay. Shout out to the McNeil Mavericks in Round Rock, Texas.
There we go. And I, but you've had an interesting journey. I mean, you've had an interesting educational background. You went to Big Four, you went to the law firm and a provider. Tell me a little bit about that journey and kind of how you got there.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, my journey started before high school because I decided at 12, I'm really good at math and I'm really good at liberal arts. Math means I have to be a doctor, liberal arts means I have to be a lawyer. And 12-year-old me thought, if I make a mistake as a doctor, someone's dead, but I can appeal as an attorney. And that was when I set my sights right then, that moment, on like a swing set to being a lawyer. And so then I was 100% focused on it. Went to Harvard, focused on, well, a fair amount of philosophy, but government to prep me to get into law school. Graduated in 3 years. At 20, I'm in law school. And then I realized I'm very good at this and I don't have a passion for black letter law. What am I going to do? And I ended up, believe it or not, falling into eDiscovery by complete happenstance. After law school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, well, maybe I can sell stuff. What's the grossest way you can think of selling? Well, probably cars. But if I'm going to do it, it's going to be at a really nice place. So I ended up going to Orange County and becoming the top grossing BMW salesperson in North America and sold a car to a senior leader at a legal staffing company who recruited me out. And so I ended up falling into eDiscovery on the people side and realized I can actually talk about tech pretty well at Hudson Legal, at Advanced Discovery, a few other places. I became the tech expert with my philosophy background and started getting really fixated on educating myself and learning more about what is tech. And then I moved to the, further up to the left to the technology side, worked at a couple of different companies, Applied Discovery, to start cutting my teeth on, what is the technology side of the equation. I kept writing, kept speaking. At the Big Four, that was really the first time I was much more hands-on as opposed to, sales and consulting. I was helping run the tech and helping to kind of build out programs. And I got recruited out from the Big Four after a couple of years to run a global eDiscovery program at Gibson Dunn. And it was, that was really fascinating to go from the sales side to the consulting side to running the firm. And then I had to move to Austin for family. And there was a real cool opportunity to kind of be the face of disco and help lead innovation. And I did that for a few years before I got pulled out to what I think is going to be a really good home at Reveal.
Well, that's wonderful, and it's interesting. I mean, backgrounds are always fascinating to me as well. I mean, much like yourself, I have a super technical degree in history, and and I think your colleague George Sosha. I mean, he talked, and advised, and I've heard him say numerous times that some of the best approaches and the best ways for people that have been successful in discovery has been a liberal arts, because we're constantly having to pull from multiple disciplines
Oh,
in
yeah.
order to actually make something happen. I mean, you've got to have an aspect of customer service and sales. You've got to have an aspect of people skills. You have to have an aspect of technology and actually know what an XML schema is. You have to actually know all of these things and be able to tie those all together. And I, and I think that's held true overall. I remember there was a point in time in my career where I felt, that because I didn't have a technical background, because I didn't have a computer science degree, that I was really lacking credibility. And hearing people like George and working with people like yourself and other people in the industry kind of helped me get over that personally for me. And I thought that was, I think it's good for those that are interested in a career in technology or legal technology or anything like that. Don't be ashamed if you've got a passion for it. You'll find a way to do it.
It's easy to have imposter syndrome here because you're at the nexus of law, but maybe you're not a practicing attorney. You're at the nexus of tech, but you're not a computer scientist. But, I found that being a translator between the two was actually very sticky. And I think that's what a lot of folks like me and you and George ended up doing is, we are that sticky hub in between maybe an engineer who only will do leet speak and talk in terms of code and an attorney who maybe like me went to law school because they didn't want to do lambda calculus. And so it's the soft skills and that EQ and that ability to communicate is super valuable.
Yes, it is. And so, I mean, and again, I think it's really important. And I think this is part of the networking opportunity and the mentorship thing. And I know you spend a lot of time mentoring women and a lot of other people, but, I know you and Maribel Rivera and a few other folks have spent a lot of time, mentoring women in the industry. Could you tell us about some of the efforts you have and some of the success stories you've seen in that area?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, I'm kind of an open book. So I always am looking for people that are hungry. And so there have been people I've hired at multiple companies I've gone with and brought them along with me. There are people where it's, hey, once every 6 months we talk. There are folks where it's mainly on social media. It's a mixed bag and it's all about kind of meeting people where they are. And it's been everything from more tech support to project management to folks that I think are going to be the next Cat Casey's of the world. And so it's been really exciting to see people evolve. And I just kind of I keep my door open. I always tell people I can be their resident data dork or their data Sherpa, and that counts too for mentorship.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And it just last night I was someone had reached out to me and saw that I'd signed up for and did my IGP, my information governance professional certification, and just asked about the studying, and I gave him some recommendations, and it was amazing. He sent me an email or a LinkedIn notification last night saying, "Hey, I just wanted to say I got my certification. Thank you so much. Your insight was spot on, and that was great." And I think you know I tell you, those are the heartwarming feelings. I mean, I love working big deals and dealing with complex issues, but when you actually kind of have an impact on someone's just life, just in the small things. I find that's always just been those are the things that kind of keep me kind of happy at the day.
100%. And it, I think people who are in our spot, who are being approached to mentor, might get nervous, like how much time is it? How much of a lift is it? It really doesn't have to be that much. It's, give what you can and just always be open to it. Because I have found even offhanded, quick conversations have been truly impactful for people. Like just try not to overthink it in terms of being like, oh, well, I've got to talk to someone every third Thursday for 2.3 hours. It doesn't have to be that regimented.
Well, that's a good question because I mean, there's I've worked with my mentor over the last few months, and we started off with mentorship methodologies, and part of it was, what's the give and take around that. But this is a much more formal mentorship where we have weekly meetings and sessions, and I have homework and things like that. I typically find that I react much better personally to kind of more of that spot mentorship. If you have a question, let me help you, that type of thing, that kind of karma thing. Um,
It
but
depends on what your bandwidth is. Like I think for me, because I'm doing 10,000 things and I do have a lot of folks that want it. I know if I was to dedicate in a more structured way, that would mean I don't have as much in my gas tank to share broadly with folks. And so for me, the more ad hoc, like I'm going to talk with Sheila Grilla, I'm going to talk with Joy, I'm going to talk with whoever, like just as I can, as they have a need, that tends to be means I can kind of spread my, brain or whatever you want to call it, but help more people. And so for me, it's more about, being accessible. And then if someone wanted something more formal, like we could always talk about it, but it's all about, I want to be a resource as much as I can be.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, I've now started applying kind of what I call the thin Yoda approach and the thick Yoda approach, right? So it's, sometimes you're going to be a thin Yoda, which is here's your kind of your nugget of information. In other cases, it's okay. We're going to go run through the swamps of Dagobah, and so it really depends on that type of relationship. Um, you have really focused your career over the last couple years around innovation.
Mhm, mhm.
What is innovation to you?
Innovation is finding a novel or better answer to a problem, right? So that could be a different process, upskilling people, developing new technology, but it's finding a new and better way to do something. And I think people overcomplicate it and they want it to be Six Sigma this, Lambda that. It's about asking, can I do this better? And then having an approach where you solicit ideas in a cross-functional way, you test them, and you kind of sometimes throw a little spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I think much like with mentoring, it's easy to get lost in the process and the structure and the organizational heft of innovation and then not move anywhere. And so I try to take an approach where it's you're just looking for ways to do something better, to make it more or less unpleasant for the person that's ultimately using your tool or your tech, and or to make it a better process for your team. And I think in taking that approach, you can kind of look at all three legs of the stool, the people process tech, and not get so stuck into I'm just going to build a better widget. It's like, no, I'm solving a problem, I'm finding a better way, a different way of doing stuff. And it's been really useful the last 18 months because in my mind, my role kind of shifted from chief innovation officer to chief adaptation officer, right? Adapting and pivoting, maybe using resources I had, but it's a different process or it's a different approach for people or it's bringing people along for the journey. And so that's maybe it's a little bit different, but that's the vision I kind of have taken to it all.
So let me ask you this, because this is something that I'm always curious about, and the people, because a lot of times, when people are talking about building innovation programs or using, innovation, it almost becomes almost overwhelming. Let me give you an example. I was working with one client, and I've considered myself fairly innovative over the years, because much like yourself, it's adaptability and just figuring stuff out.
That's
Uh,
it.
but I had one client come to me and said, uh, our organization has an innovation challenge across the board to basically change it. Come up with an innovation idea for me. And I mean, that was like that. It was like once I was being asked to to create something innovative. I almost got stuck there. I really didn't. I didn't know how to respond to that because to me, just innovation and adaptability is natural.
Yeah.
So, how do you find those people who want to launch these innovation programs? Be our innovation officer. Be this, right? What does that really mean, and how do people, actually get value out of it rather than training a program that's destined for failure.
I think it kind of weaves in with the myths we tell ourselves about innovation. Only certain organizations can do it. You need a Einstein or Elon Musk type person to do it. You need a big program. You need a big budget. You need to be a new company, an old company. Like, we get very bogged down in it. I think the key is to start identifying in your org people that are having ideas and that want to maybe be on a committee. Like, you don't have to start by building an innovation program. That's great, but that's down the line once you've got some innovation cooking, the culture of innovation. That's sort of step one, making it so people aren't afraid to say, hey, I have an idea. I was talking with Jeremy Burge early on in the pandemic, and he was saying one of the most innovative ideas someone on his team had was, hey, use WhatsApp. We've got international people. We're not sure how to get in touch with everyone. Like, to me, that little thing that a junior associate did is innovation. And he wasn't afraid to, or a junior lit support person, he wasn't afraid to say it. So I think the key is you start with the culture of innovation. People aren't afraid to ask. They aren't afraid to try and maybe fail. They aren't afraid to say, hey, we could be doing this differently. Then from that culture, you can start building a program if you need it, if what you need is very wholesale. I think the most successful companies in terms of innovation, they may have a chief innovation officer, or they may just have a culture where people aren't afraid to say, can we do this better? Because that question is the root of innovation, adaptation, all of that in the core of my being. That's what I feel.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still got a little stuck in terms of attorneys using WhatsApp for work products. And
No,
my
no, no.
heart just skipped
It
a
was
little
to
bit
schedule. It was to schedule. It was not
now.
work.
Okay, okay, okay,
It was to say, hey, can we meet?
okay. Yeah, it's just like, all right.
No.
Recommendation to folks: if you have cross-border challenges and issues, make sure you're working with your compliance team and your information governance privacy team to make sure you're in compliance using the appropriate technology. Let's just throw that out there.
He's gonna kill me. No, no, this is more to coordinate people, make sure they could like sync up early in the pandemic. But it's,
Fair.
and you know what? Even if the what the young associate had wanted was to do work product, that's when you say, oh, part of that idea is good. Here's the risk. Let's try the part that's good. Like, you don't want to have to shut someone down. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Well, and that's what, again, mentorship and guiding what innovation is. If you've got a good, strong innovation leader that says the nugget of the idea is good, but here are the challenges that you're going to have. Now let's actually build something that's really cool. And maybe we can now leverage our internal teams work or Skype or whatever people are using for collaboration. That's controlled per the compliance requirements.
Well, and
So
that's kind of about design thinking. Like, you have the hypothesis, you trial run it in a small way, you see what pivots you have to make. And so, kind of like with the culture of innovation, having a process to innovate, because innovation's a process. Like, it's not a toy, it's not a person, it's not dollars and cents. It's a way of seeing a problem, identifying ways to fix it, soliciting feedback, trying it out, rinse, repeat as needed. Like, that's a big part of it too.
that's very true. So let's bounce a little bit back into let's talk a little bit about kind of what's going on in terms of what's going in the legal technology space. I mean, we talked some innovation. I mean, and I mean, we hear a lot of that word innovation being thrown around legal technology. But I guess what are the things that you're seeing in our little legal tech space? Now getting bigger, we're seeing IPOs as LegalZoom and things like that now. But what are the things that you're seeing that that you'd like to be able to share with our listeners?
You know, I think the biggest thing is people have these little supercomputers in their hand with a plethora of applications that are, they're kind of sexy, they're easy to use, they're intuitive, and there's an expectation cross business, cross enterprise, and now law that tech that you use will be like that too. And so there's, I think, a push towards more user friendly, kind of sexy AI. The pandemic forced people to be able to, work from anywhere, which means legal tech has had to keep up. Big shift towards SaaS as an option. And I think the need to adapt has made a lot of people reevaluate kind of the monolith approach to eDiscovery. I think I was talking about this in an article a few days ago, and people want a little freedom of choice. They want to be able to choose their own adventure in terms of, do I want cloud? Do I want on-prem? Do I want some combination of the two? Do I want to work with a service provider? Do I want it directly? Do I want to use visual analytics? Do I want to use textual analytics? What do I want to build? How do I build the solution my program needs? And so I think there's, a shift towards wanting to choose your own adventure that people are asking for now. And that's really exciting to me, because I think as the clients get more engaged and a little more involved in the process, we're going to be able to build better solutions that actually won't be like when I was at Gibson, like banging my head against the wall because stuff wasn't working right.
Yeah, and that's typically one of the biggest challenges. I mean, that's so what about on the review side? Because I know that you're currently working with a lot of review approaches and methodologies. Are there things, I mean, are the algorithms replacing the attorneys yet? What's going on there?
All right, audience. Robo lawyers are not coming. There will not be hordes of people in threadbare Brooks Brothers suits holding up signs saying, "We'll litigate for food." I promise. No, but what I've been telling people for a while is robots won't replace you, but Jason or Kat or whoever up the hall that is using tech to get to information more quickly, make more informed decisions, or do tasks more efficiently, they're going to leapfrog ahead. And I was seeing this already when I was at Gibson. There were one of the youngest partners ever who was on the executive committee was because he understood tech and was leveraging it. I think that especially now, because the pandemic has shaken things up so much and people have been trying new things to bridge the gap, the appetite for innovation being demanded by clients is increasing. And so the firms that are going to be really successful and the corporate legal departments and the service providers are the ones that are embracing AI and legal tech. And so I think what we're going to see is a lot more of I used to call it like becoming Iron Man. It's not Terminator, it's not a robot with no brain. It's Tony Stark plus the Iron Man suit. The suit is just sitting in the corner until Tony Stark tells it what to do and it gives them all this information. That's sort of the future I see for lawyers. A bunch of different tools they can choose to use in different ways on each case that make them a better version of themselves, a better attorney who then for clients delivers better results or lower cost results or quicker results. And then they get more business because they're doing better than the competition.
So, but that's part of the evangelism work that we still continue to have to do as an industry, right? To continue to build that crop. I mean, when I started a few years ago. I mean, you couldn't even
And
talk legal or technology to a lawyer, right? It was like if I can't put it in my piece of paper or put it in my briefcase, it wasn't evidence, right? So I mean, it's changed quite a bit, and now they've got kind of a younger crop of attorneys and litigations that are now hitting the partner level at this point in time. It's going to be interesting to see how that changes. I mean, do you have any insight on that or thoughts around that?
I think that FOMO is kicking in,
Mm.
right? So attorneys are seeing their peers, young or old, because part of it's generational, but part of it's just, if I don't see other people that are doing better than me because they're using tech, why would I change what I'm doing? But if I do, then I will. The other thing is the tech is getting easier to use. Like think about predictive coding as it was in De Silva Moore. Iterations, rounds, you're using lambda calculus statistics and precision recall. It's not that anymore. Like now you're getting visuals that are just very easy to use. You can, click in like the equivalent of a Netflix library and pick what model you want to start off with and get insights from second one. It's just much more integrated, easy, and I mean, kind of sexy. It feels more like the consumer grade, very powerful stuff we're used to working with, but that doesn't make us think, oh, I am using AI when I go into Netflix. I am using AI when I go into Facebook. People you may know, I am using AI when I Google. Like, you don't think about that. You are. It's the most powerful AI on the planet. Legal tech is getting there to where it's not a crazy alternative workflow where you don't have to do such a different, unfamiliar approach to get the benefit of it. And I think the combination of FOMO and tech that is easier to use is going to push us to that tipping point of adoption.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right, and it's great to, and I will definitely keep track of all of your posts as you're starting to see that. Kind of back on the personal side, one of the things I've missed over the last year as part of our pandemic is the Cat Casey travel log.
I know. I know.
I mean, tell me about how COVID's impacted you personally, and when are you going to get back on the road and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it's I went from probably 50 weeks a year traveling somewhere. I think one week I was in Chicago, New York, London, and somewhere West San Fran, like all in a 6-day period. So it was really weird when the world shut down. I'm glad not that it shut down, but that I had the time to focus on other channels and kind of reinvest in remote connection because the conferences are great. And I'm have my first business trip next week. I'm doing ILTA in August. So things are picking back up. They're great, but it's not as deep of a connection as you sometimes get in a podcast like this, even a long form conversation on LinkedIn. So it's been really nice to make that pivot and start investing. I did like the 5 o'clock somewhere, probably 50 or 60 virtual events, and I started focusing even more on writing. It's been good to flesh that way of connecting with people out, because not everyone can go to a conference and not everyone is at every conference. And 5 minutes over a glass of wine is wonderful, but maybe it's not as substantive as what might be in a digital format. So I think what you'll see go forward is, yeah, I'm definitely going back to traveling. I think my first ticket is Monday, right? And you'll see some of me darting all over the world, but it's going to be balanced with staying connected with my ecosystem who maybe don't have a company that's going to pay to send them to an offsite, or hey, they don't run into me at a conference. So it's more about balancing all the ways of connecting with people.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it as well. I've done some travel over the last 6 months or so for clients, of course, but it's to me, it's I definitely miss being on the road. I mean, it's been hard. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really have enjoyed the fact that it's given me a lot of time to be very introspective about myself, my career, where I want to go, my directions, my strengths, and a lot of the actual these Zoom meetings or Teams meetings or whatever social media platform you're using have been really positive. I've gained some really closer relationships than I think I would have when because people just it's like they don't have an excuse. It's not like, I'm out, right? I'm out on a trip. No, you're not.
Yeah.
So, and it's nice to change.
It's a balance. And I think because we've been forced to flex different muscles, our connection as an industry is going to be stronger even as we go back to the IRL.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, I have a little bit that I like to do towards the end of our things, and I call this, and I'm going to share this my screen with you for a moment.
Oh,
It's called the Clone Wars Quote of the Day.
oh,
Now, I saw that you are a data dork.
I am. I am.
And I all I saw was dork because and I'm
To be
assuming that's
fair,
good
I mean,
stuff.
I wear it with a badge of honor. I had to work to earn my dorkiness because they weren't calling my philosophy major self that to begin with.
Exactly. So part of that is one of the things that I've discovered is that Clone Wars have some great philosophical quotes. And you being a philosophy major, and a dork, and me being a big Star Wars fan, I came up with this quote, which comes from Star Wars season 2, episode 15, which is searching for truth is easy, but accepting truth is hard.
Mhm.
Please apply that to your professional and your personal life.
Well, I think in the professional sense, it ties back to, you know, all of us accepting that the future is here already. The people that are afraid of tech. I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday about the silliest excuses people use not to use legal tech, right? And it's also for us personally, like we have to accept that the reality is here, not keep looking for it and start embracing and leveraging it. On the personal side, it kind of goes back to the imposter syndrome. Like I was striving for so long to find this truth, to kind of find this identity of being accepted by the technologist, by, hey, I'm not a computer science background, but I belong at the table. I deserve a seat at the table. And it's the thing that's been harder to accept. And I've noticed it more with my role at Disco, and certainly now with all the buzz around me at Reveal, is I've kind of grown into that data dork, and I've grown into that person with a seat at the table. And, part of me still has that imposter syndrome, and all that striving is sort of, I'm still striving, but it's interesting to realize like I'm kind of there too.
Well, as someone who's been in the room with you in some of these meetings, you definitely are not an imposter. So let's provide some positive affirmation around that.
Thank you. Brush my
But
shoulder.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, I think these are you've nailed it, Kat. I mean, it's really hard because it's as you're going out and finding things, it's the journey and looking for things is easy, right? But once you find out what it is and who you really are, I think that's when, and coming to accept that and embracing that, I think is really the hardest thing. I saw this quote and then I also was sort of thinking about reviewers, right? Which is, all right, now I've got this huge data set. I could go search for all this stuff, but holy crap, I'm guilty, right? Those are all kind of, or that how do I pivot or
Algorithm already found all the relevant docs. Do I need to keep looking, or can I trust that I've done sampling? I've looked in the viz. There's not anything there. It's all Final Fantasy football. The whole like trust but verify can kind of be the enemy of success and actually benefiting from the AI's efficiencies.
That's right. That's right. Well, Kat, how can people find you?
Well, start with my website, thetechnocat.com, or LinkedIn. I'm Catherine Cat Casey. Or you can email me, ccasey at revealdata.com, or smoke signals,
LinkedIn. Don't forget LinkedIn. LinkedIn. You definitely be connected on LinkedIn. So I encourage people to.
I accept pretty much everyone. My thought is wherever someone is in their career, maybe we're going to work together today, maybe we'll work together in 10 years, maybe you can learn from me, maybe I can learn from you. So don't be shy, and don't be shy to throw a comment or ask a question. I like talking about this stuff.
Yeah, and you've always been very open. You respond to most all the comments that I see out there. So thank you for taking the time to do that. It's really impactful for our network. So thank you everyone for joining for us for this episode of Out of Curiosity. Kat, thank you so much. This was a great discussion. I've learned a lot, and thank you for helping me, satiate my curiosity. For those, please like, subscribe, sign up. If you have questions or things that you are curious about, let me know, and feel free to connect with me as well. And I look forward to having you join us for our next episode of Out of Curiosity. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kat.
Pleasure.